Alright, let's continue with our next step. As part of step 4, what we need to create is so-called a mapping XML file. This is the XML file that tells Hibernate which persistent class and its fields would map to which relation or table and its columns. Let me just walk you through the XML document and then you'll understand better. So you have this file employee.hbm.xml. Do make sure that whatever the persistent class name that you give here, it has to be same name in here as well. So I'm going to drag this into our project's resources. Alright, let me pull it again. So here we have, as part of resources, let's see what's inside it. These tags are pretty straightforward to understand actually. We have this root tag Hibernate mapping, inside which you would specify multiple class files, essentially the persistent class files. So you have this tag in here and you would specify the name of the class along with its package. So this is our persistent class, if you remember, and we're mentioning with what table name is the table in the relational database, and then we're just mentioning those two properties residing in that persistent class. In our case, they're just age and name, and here are age and name, and they map to the relational database table columns with the name and age. So you provide this attribute column that maps to the relational database table. So essentially we're trying to map this particular attribute of entity or persistent class with this relational database table column. And in here we're providing the data type, basically whatever the data type that you provide in here, same goes here as well. And then we have this field which is ID, which is also again specified as part of the persistent class. By the way, forget about all these annotations, we're going to talk about it pretty soon. And here is the ID and is actually the primary key of the relational database table. And these attributes are pretty straightforward. You would provide the name, which is ID, whatever is specified over here, and then the type, data type of that field and its corresponding column in the table employee. And additionally, you can also include this particular tag, which is generator. This is like generating the identifier automatically. And in here you can have multiple options. Basically these options are somewhat similar to what you would specify as part of a database SQL query. If you know about generating sequences in SQL, then you can easily understand various other options we can provide in here. In my database course, we've talked about all of them, creating sequences, auto-incrementing the values, etc. So once we run our application, we'll be able to see what this is going to do, and specifically we're going to check to see what is the SQL statement that Hibernate has executed to replicate the same. Now once you specify this mapping file and tell Hibernate which persistent class and its fields should map to which table and its columns, you'd have to mention that mapping inside your Hibernate config XML file, just as we did here. And by the way, this particular file doesn't necessarily have to be an XML file. You can also specify this as a properties file. So you would name it as hibernate.properties, but make sure that the name is Hibernate and nothing else. And when you're specifying a properties file, it's going to look something like this. You would get rid of all these tags and instead you would just use these names like Hibernate connection URL equals the URL. Similarly, you would provide all the other parameters. We have dialect, etc. Pretty straightforward. Now we're pretty much done with our application. The only thing that we need to do is to write a class file that triggers everything. And that class file is with the name test.java. Let's pull it into our project and to grab this to the source directory. And in order to understand what's going on in here, we need to know something about sessions and session factory, which we'll talk in next video. But before that, let's try to fix these errors. Can you guess why these errors are coming? I'll give you 2 seconds. That's because we haven't done anything to use Hibernate libraries. And as I've already mentioned, Maven will make our job a lot easier with this pom.xml file. I'm going to open this. And the content that goes inside the pom.xml file is going to be this. So let's copy all the content from here. And this is the reason why I had mentioned you better set the same coordinates that I had set so that you won't get any clashes. So here we have those exact coordinates. I'm going to copy this pom.xml file and paste it in here. So what am I doing primarily here is I've included all the dependencies that are required for our Hibernate application to run. Do take a note that these libraries not only would include Hibernate libraries, but also a few other related libraries. And it's very hard, or I would say it's impossible or pretty time consuming to do all this on your own. It's a very tedious job to search in internet and download those jar files and then point to that class files directory, etc. It's a big mess. So Maven comes in very handy, and it's a great tool. And in addition to that, by default, the default compiler plugin that comes along with Maven would use Java 1.5 version. So we need to explicitly set these parameters to use the Java version that you are using. So whichever the Java version that you have installed, you can specify that version number in here. So make sure that you change this. And if you haven't provided the same coordinates that I had provided, do make sure that you change them over here. Let me save this file and make sure that we don't have those errors anymore. So let me just quickly update the project. I go to Maven, update project, and this is certainly going to take a while. So let me just pause the video and then get back. Alright, here we are. Now there are no errors whatsoever. So we'll talk about what's happening in here in our next video. See you soon.